I'm joined by Rose Mbanya. Rose is an advocate of the High Court. And what an interesting time this is in the judiciary.
Yes, indeed.
Historic?
Absolutely historic.
What is your take on it?
I'm loving it. I think that it is great to shatter glass ceilings, because that's what has been done. I mean, we've been in independence for very, very long.
Yes.
Actually, the first Chief Justice of Kenya pre-colonial times was appointed 1906. And from then on until now, there's never been a woman CJ. So yes, there's much to be celebrated.
It's about
time.
It's
great. It's about time.
What has brought about so many women going into law practice? I know I'm catching you off guard. This wasn't one of the questions I was going to ask you, but it's just occurred to me that I know so many female lawyers. I know a lot of male lawyers, but I actually know a lot of female lawyers.
You know, I think when we get to the time when we'll just be saying lawyers, not female lawyers or female doctors, then we will have reached where we need to go. But to answer your question directly, I think, women are capable, competent, able to do it. So why not?
I agree.
Why
I
not?
completely agree. But is the current state of the judiciary a reflection of the fact that as an institution, it is a meritocracy? Because, like you said, we are capable.
Yes.
We are accomplished. And in some ways, we are being left out. But in the judiciary, in law, for example,
yes,
women are now front and center. So does that now reflect the fact that people get in there on merit?
Yes. People do get in there by merit, because even if you didn't get in there by merit, then you wouldn't be able to stay. Your staying power comes from your merit. And so it's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to see the list. It's wonderful to see the...
Read it out. I know you want to say...
Do you want me to read it out? Okay. I mean, our, the CJ to be, Honorable Martha Koome, and then we have the acting Chief Justice, who is the Deputy Chief Justice, Honorable Philomena Mwilu. We've got the Chairperson of the JSC, Olive Mugenda.
Yes.
We've got the acting President of the Court of Appeal, Honorable Wanjiru Karanja, Principal Judge of the High Court, Honorable Lydia Achode, Principal Judge, the Environmental and Land Courts, Honorable Maureen Onyango. We've got the Chief Registrar, Honorable Anne Amadi. We've got the Registrar of the High Court, Judy Omange. I mean, the list goes on. So it's
course,
brilliant.
You are the chairperson of the Legal Education Appeals Tribunal.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
So
proud of it too.
Tell me about, when it comes back to the law and how it's affecting us, what current laws are there in place that are seeking to promote gender equality?
I think, first of all, we'd go back to the Constitution, because that's where it's all grounded, Article 27, where there's a promise for non-discrimination on the grounds of a lot of things, including gender.
Yes.
So that's where it all begins. When the Constitution makes that promise, then the rest is our play field.
Okay.
So there is that.
Yes.
And that's where it all begins. And then when it trickles down to the various other laws, we've seen a lot of amendments and changes in the matrimonial law.
Yes.
There's a bill in the Succession Act to change a couple of things.
Yes.
So I'd say, including, let's say, like there's been the changes in the Employment Act as well, which gave maternity leave was always there, but now it's paid.
Yes.
It's also now available for adopting parents.
Maternity leave wasn't paid before?
Yes, there's a period that it wasn't paid. So you'd have to go the least time possible just to be able to come back and get a pay.
Yes.
And, somebody's got to make these babies. Somebody has got to carry them and have them. So you can imagine if you're the woman in the middle of, employment, and then you've got to go and you face a period where you're not being paid, not for the fault of anything else, but
for the sheer fact that you're a woman.
To procreate.
Exactly. So there are laws that are promoting this equality, but where are we falling short? Because we are falling short. And people are looking at the nomination of Martha Koome as a holy grail of sorts. They're looking for miracles. It's like a crusade is about to happen, right? And we have to be realistic in that there are processes and there are systems and there are policies.
Yes.
So let's start off with, what are people going to be looking at with regards to gender for her as now a woman? We're just assuming, in a utopic world that, she's approved by the president. What are they looking to her to fix? Okay,
let me start by saying this, that first off, it's such a great nomination to have Honorable Martha Koome, because historically, she's been very active, especially in the family and the children rights.
Yes.
So to that extent, it is something that I believe she's very passionate about. Now, there are various things, of course, that everybody's hopeful, or because A, she's a woman, and B, that has been her history, then she can come and solve it all. But the truth of the matter as well is that laws are created in certain ways. And so it's not like she will go in there and be able to work miracles.
She's not an emperor.
She's not an emperor, yes. She's not an emperor, and she'll not go in there and now just concoct things and make it happen. So the laws have got to be supportive of that. How it is done has also got to be supportive of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's important for us to know that even as we, in terms of the philosophy and what she stands for, that's a big plus, because it's always good to have somebody that's passionate about the things that need to be done. How it gets done, I don't think we should rely on her entirely to make a miracle. It takes society, it takes legislature, so that's the way that I would look at that.
As you enjoy this enlightening conversation that I'm having with High Court Advocate, founder and team leader of R.W. Mbanya and Company Advocates, regarding the gaps in our legal system as pertains to women's rights. They thought you were a man.
Yes, especially because of the initials. So, when I first began, many years ago, they'd come in and then, I'd say hello and they'd say, I want to see the advocate.
Yes.
Yes, because, it wouldn't be.
It couldn't possibly be you.
But of course, things have changed, and you will find that very many women are very capably and competently handling.
But why does it say in your documentation, wife of?
Oh, I'll tell you what.
Yes.
When I was registering my law firm.
Yes.
And we had, right now it can be done digitally. But when we were doing it, and in fact, it's still in the law, although in practice it's a little different.
Yes.
So when you were filling in the paperwork, you'd have to write, there'd be an entry there, wife of. So I can tell you, like, my husband obviously is not a lawyer, has not practiced, is not at all in the legal field.
Yes.
But his name features in my registration document because it wasn't enough for me to just say that it's Rose Mbanya.
In his company, does it say husband
Absolutely
off?
No. The husband doesn't have to say husband off. So yeah, it's, some of those things are like relics. Yeah, it's really strange.
But speaking of laws that are perhaps positive, what does the law do for us to promote gender equality? Okay,
just as I said earlier, of course, there's the Article 27, and that's the grand promise that you will be treated as equal in everything.
Yes.
Then when we go into the Constitution a bit more, there is Article 45. It talks about the family. It talks about how that family is formed and says that the parties to a marriage will be will be regarded as equal at the time of marriage, during the marriage, even at the dissolution of the marriage. Okay. So again, I think that's an important step, because for a long time, the wife's position was always the subservient position.
Yes.
And interestingly, like if, for instance, you looked at the Income Tax Act to date.
Yes.
Although it was formulated way back in 1970s, and I know there are changes in it.
Yes.
A wife's income, if you're living with your husband, is considered to be your husband's income. Just think on that.
Wait.
Yes.
My income is my husband's income.
Yes.
But his income is also my income.
No. It is this way, that when income, when you're doing the income tax declarations, if you are a wife living with your husband, then he will do the income, he'll do the returns.
Yes.
And together with the things he owns and his chattels and his land, he'll also include there his wife's income, because it presupposes that the wife's income is...
No, it presupposes that the husband owns the wife.
Yes, it presupposes that the husband owns everything that is within his... in his homestead, including the woman's income. Here's the rider. So they say, if you're married and living with him and are not declaring your taxes, then it will then be said, the husband then would do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll put that in another box for now and go back one step. You said that in a marriage, the two are considered equal.
There's
Second wife?
Now,
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No. It is interesting.
Is
because
it a third?
No. So that's what the promise is in the Constitution. Then we go into the Marriage Act, which now, just narrows down things a little more. And yes, you will have that equality. But the Marriage Act does now allow, since 2014, does allow for the registration of polygamous marriages.
Okay.
What happens, say, at dissolution? There is no provision on exactly how things are to be done. So we are working as we go along, and you will then find arguments for, you are married to the first wife for the first 14 years, so let's see what had been done there. Let's divide that way. And then we see the second wife came in at year 14. You then stayed together with the first wife and the second wife for 6 years. So between those, those 20...
You now need an auditor.
It's crazy. But
yes,
it even gets more complicated because, so that's upon dissolution of the marriage.
Yes.
You'd then be saying, I'm off. I'm the first wife. I'm off. We've stayed with you for 20 years. This is what we have gained. This is what I'm claiming.
Rose.
But Olivia,
yes,
when it comes to the Succession Act, it gets even more convoluted.
How?
Because there's a section 3.5 and it says, a wife for purposes of the Succession Act shall be a former wife, a current wife, a wife. It's basically, you are now just holding your marriage certificate, and it really means almost nothing, because all that needs to... Actually, the way that I like to say it is that the Succession Act now finally presumes anybody who had presented or intended or thought that they're a wife in that family comes right in. So there's a lot that needs to be done to just redefine things. And you asked a very interesting question about what about in polygamy. So in polygamy, I guess the equality is, you devise a way of how things will be divided.
I am speaking to the current convener of the Nairobi High Court Family Court Bar Bench Committee. And why are you giving me side eyes?
Well, I'm laughing because, yes, I was the convener for over 10 years, but I very recently said that it's about time somebody else took that up.
Out of your own accord?
So, yes, so the right description is the immediate past convener.
You see,
that would be more accurate.
People do step down from roles, willingly, without being forced or thrown out.
Yes,
women in leadership, I'm loving it. So we've discussed a few things about how the current laws impact women. Which ones are negatively impacting us?
Which ones are negatively impacting us, or which ones at least are not looking at the equality or the parity base? I would say, first of all, there's need for changes in the Succession Act.
I love how diplomatic you are. No, it's very good. You are a lawyer after all. Continue.
Yes. I talked about the Section 3.5, the one that has really no definition of what a wife is, so that the promise of what is in the Marriage Act just gets lost when it comes to succession.
Exactly.
So there's a real problem there, because, this long-suffering wife has been at it for the whole time, and upon the death of her spouse, it's a free-for-all. I think that's really not good.
The way you've described it, I can just imagine that woman. Honestly, I can just imagine this long-suffering wife. But we'll talk about that another day.
And Kashungwa comes and she needs nothing else but just to say that I've also been part of this harem. The other thing, again, in the Succession Act would be what is defined as the life interest. Here's how it goes. If for instance, your husband passes on and he had no will, you will then get a right to the property.
Yes.
But you get the right to that property with a life interest, which will lapse if you remarry. But if you turn it around, if my husband dies, he takes over my property. But upon remarrying...
If you die... You said if your husband dies.
So the first scenario is this, when we're talking about the life interest, is that if the male spouse dies, the husband dies, and it is then said that the wife will get a life interest on his property, whatever has been left behind, in trust for the children.
Okay.
Upon her being, if she, in life, if she gets another partner and remarries, then her life interest lapses, and it goes to her children automatically.
Oh, okay.
It is not the same for the man. So if it is the wife who had died, and the guy gets the interest on her property,
and then he
even
remarries.
if it's in trust for the children, and he remarries, he retains the right to continue.
But why?
having-
And
exactly.
how can we change that? So now moving away from the laws that impact us, I'll say negatively, honestly.
I think that's negatively,
It
no
is
doubt,
very
negatively.
negative.
Yes.
How do we bring about change?
What it should read is a spouse, not a woman. The woman shall only get it upon remarriage. If they're going to stop, if the life interest shall lapse on marriage, then it should be both ways.
Okay.
But I think the better way of looking at it is let whoever got it just continue to have it.
Okay.
Because under the Marriage Act, as a woman, in fact, under the Constitution, let's start there, where we're
Yes.
talking about equal rights at, before, during, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
It said to you that the promise here is that when you acquire things together,
Yes.
they will be yours. You have a right, an
retain
equal
them.
right to own them even.
Yes.
So why should it be that upon his death, and now you've owned them for a while, that if you remarry, they go elsewhere?
They're suddenly
why
not
should
yours.
Yeah, why should
So-
you be discriminated on the status of your new marriage?
So, Rose, how does change come about
thank you.
in law?
Good question. So the first thing, of course, is to identify those problems, and then to start to create laws. Like, for example, if we talked about the Succession Act, what we did, and now at least I can proudly say what we did when I was convener of the family bar bench,
Yes.
is to just pick out all those areas that are problematic and are not equal. Do not give that promise of equality.
Yes.
And we then got an expert drafter,
Yes.
and we told them this is what we think should be. And then after that, we lobby a lot so that it gets to Parliament. Yeah, as a
So
bill,
what is the
a written
lobbying
bill.
process? I understand. Are you just pestering people? Are you just constantly writing? Are you constantly calling?
Not that way, but you do need to get who your champions will be,
Yes.
say in Parliament.
Yes.
So in this case, or even let's say like reproductive health bill, you get somebody who is aligned, who would be a champion for you
Yes.
at legislature. I
Okay.
think we have Susan Kihika on the reproductive
Health.
bill one. I can't remember who helped with the succession one. I'm sorry about
okay.
that. But because once it is created, it's drafted.
Yes.
It goes to the drafters,
Yes.
and they draft it. It's sent to Parliament.
Okay.
Then there'll be an introductory stage of it, the first reading,
Yes.
where they just basically get to hear, this is what has been thought of, and here's a draft.
Yes.
And they're probably not going to in-depth reading of it.
Yes.
Once
Just
it
a
has been-
highlight.
just a highlight. This is the problem. This is the pain. This is the way that they hope to
Mitigate.
deal with it.
Yes.
And these are the suggestions that have been made. Okay. Then it will go now for the second reading. At the second reading, there'll be more focus on exactly what is being written. So it's a more in-depth now going into the law. They probably have somebody just taking them through each of them.
Yes.
And there'll be a consideration at that time, but a vote is not taken.
Okay.
But what is done at the second reading is that a committee is formed
Yes.
that will now look more in depth
Yes.
into that bill
Yes.
and just recommend amendments,
Yes.
suggestions, maybe tweak it
Yes.
and all of that.
Yes.
So that will be done at the committee stage, and that's where now the technocrats will come in.
Okay.
And of course, now with the way things are, there's public participation as well. So before it even went for the first hearing, so
Yes.
to take us back,
Yes.
that we had done.
Okay.
You talk to women groups, men groups,
Yes.
students, everybody,
parties.
interested parties, stakeholders, all of that. So at the committee stage now, all that is being checked as well. Has
Yes.
that happened
Yes.
and everything? And then now it will go back for the third reading,
Yes.
and at the third reading is when it gets the nod of approval.
So
or
that's
not.
when they vote.
That's when they vote.
And timelines between the first reading and the third?
It all depends on how prioritized
Yes.
your bill is.
Yes.
There's some that will take way long if you don't have the right champions, and that's where the lobbying comes in.
Way long.
Way long.
So what?
Way long if you...
What does that actually mean? We're talking years, months, decades?
we can talk years, because I can tell you, like the 2014 marriage, by the time it became an act, the lobbying for it had begun probably about 8 years.
Speaking to High Court Advocate R.W. Mbanya. How are you?
I'm good.
We've covered quite a few things. You said it
Yes.
took 8 years for the family bill to be passed.
Yes.
Domestic violence has been outlawed.
Yes, domestic violence has been outlawed. In fact, we have the Protection from Domestic Violence Act as well, which is a great gain.
Both ways.
Absolutely both ways. Yeah,
Excellent.
in everything, we always have to remember the sword cuts both ways.
What about if a wife decides she does not want to engage with her husband, and he decides to go ahead anyway. What does the law say on that?
And you mean sexually?
Yes.
Okay, that would be found in the Sexual Offences Act. I believe it's section 43.
It's not illegal.
It doesn't, it doesn't exempt.
So rape within marriage
sex,
is allowed?
Sex within marriage. It doesn't disallow sex within marriage. But yes, you're right. Therefore, if he's forcing himself on her, then he can have a defense that, but I've married her. But I do know that there is a move to have that section changed because it flies in the face of the protections that are given for everybody being equal and being able to voice yourself and being able to say what you need.
Has there been
marriage.
any discussion in Parliament yet about it?
I don't believe so. I believe that it's still at the stage where it's being formulated so that then it can be, by stakeholders, so it can then be presented.
So can we please be discussing that instead of actually considering lowering the age of consent from 18 to 16?
Oh, don't even get me started
Were
on
people
that.
asleep the last 2 years? I mean, with schools being out, there was such an upsurge in teenage pregnancy.
Do you know, Olivia, that by November of 2020,
yes,
the statistics showed that there was 449,000 children that had been defiled throughout the country. So, you know, when you speak about lowering the age of consent and just minimizing this whole, diminishing the topic on defilement, it's so at the core of the protections that the children require.
I found it hard to stomach some of the arguments that were being brought forth, and in fact I won't even go into that. I just want to say that by making it legal for a 16-year-old, you're opening a whole other can of worms. I'm not just about their equally 16, 17, 18-year-old boyfriends. There are other modes of and other activities, that these girls will now legally be allowed to engage in, right? That prior were protecting them. I mean, the average age of a high school graduate is what?
19, 18?
Exactly.
Yes.
So you're telling me one of the things that Layla Daraja Academy said is that one of the reasons of dropout from the academy is pregnancy.
Yes.
So if you're legalizing it for someone who's 16 years old, you're just opening that up to them. How can we stop this from happening?
First of all, of course, there'll have to be a big no from everybody who cares for children.
I care.
Yes, you care and I do. And so there's going to be, we're going to have to do that. Everybody just say no to this. There's a difference. And of course, you've had the debate about the Romeo-Juliet relationships, where it's my 18-year-old boy and, engaging with his 17-year-old girlfriend. That's to be treated differently.
Yes.
And I think the underlying thing that people must understand is that law also has a place for protection.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not just about punishment, but protection.
Yes.
And it's possible, even within the law, to see how such cases can be dealt with.
Yes.
You know, because the debate has been, look, she carries herself as a woman. She's 14, her breasts are formed, and she looks in every way, and she carries herself as a woman.
Yes.
But that's a child.
Exactly.
Nevertheless, that's a child. So if and that's to be differentiated. So if this 14-year-old who looks in every way like a woman, yes, and there's this 23-year-old fellow who has seen that way and therefore has defiled her, that's a defilement.
Yes.
He has better knowledge. You know, he has superior knowledge to her on what should happen. Okay. Actually, in one of the laws, it says that if the lady led the fellow to believe that she was an adult. So those are the things that need to be scrapped.
Change
absolutely
that
scrapped.
Narrative.
Yeah. You see, when we talk about consent, it's not just about that sex, because that's the only angle that people are looking at. Like, you know, he's 19, she's 17, what's the difference? But here's the thing. Think about the strip clubs.
Yes.
Think about the pornographic hubs.
Yes.
What the owners, and usually they're really very callous, will just be doing is saying, sign, you know, as they take in those girls. 15 going 16, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, she signed. So there are no arrests that can be made when you go and find children being mistreated in that way, because they have given consent. So there's more to that argument. There's not more to that debate than just the narrow thing of it's Romeo and Juliet falling in love and wanting to experiment.
Thank you for clarifying that. Final parting thoughts?
Final parting thoughts. I would say that we need to normalize as a society that women are capable, competent, and wholly able to take care of business just as men are, so that the celebration is great, but we really need to normalize it so that we get to work. You know, let's get to work. Females, males.
I've decided I'm going to be a governor. Siaya County, Kisumu. We're yet
Go
to decide.
for it, girl.
But not the first.
Yes.
Right? Because I know that there's going to be one very soon.
Yes.
So as I become the second or third, right? Let's normalize it, as you said.
Normalize it, yes. It is what should be happening. It's just that it's happening late in our lives. So we lean in more and we do what must be done.
Advocate R.W. Mbanya, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Have yourself a very, very good May Day.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.